Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com and powered by all of those MoPros out there. I am your host, Michael Hartmann, flying solo as we're getting closer and closer to the end of 2025. Hard to believe. And close to 5 years of this podcast. So watch for news about that coming up in early 2026. Okay, my guest today is Richard Wasylynchuk. I knew I was going to screw it up, Richard, so you
You got
can
it. You
roast
got
me
it.
on that. VP of Marketing Operations at Trulioo and currently serving as the interim head of marketing. Richard has lived both sides of the equation, deep operations experience, and now executive level marketing leadership. And we are going to talk about why more future CMOs may come from marketing ops. I'm sure that'll be interesting for everyone who's listening. What's changing in the environment and how ops leaders can prepare themselves for executive roles, even if they never thought that was on the table. So, Richard, welcome to the show, and accept my apologies for butchering your name.
No, you got it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I know we talked a while ago, and I'm grateful that we have guests lined up for enough time that we haven't talked in a while. But so maybe let's start with just the story. Like you stepped into this interim head of marketing role after leading marketing ops. Curious, what surprised you about you being the person who got kind of pulled into that role, and why do you think that the organization looked at you as an ops leader for that role instead of maybe what I would guess most people would assume like a demand gen leader or something
Yeah,
like that, a more general marketing person.
yeah. I think the thing that surprised me most is honestly, it's nothing that I was ever chasing. Like I never really thought of myself as moving into a marketing leadership role, other than a leader in that ops pillar. My background, I spent a lot of time in demand gen, moved into marketing operations. I even segued into revenue operations, and the role before this role at Trulioo, I was a broader biz ops leader. So, owning things like IT, BI. So I've always had a very operational minded focus. So looking at systems, bottlenecks, enabling teams. So when this first came up, my honest reaction was, really me? Um, a little tentative, but when I took a step back, it actually does make a lot of sense. I think ops is really one of the few functions that sees the entire ecosystem from end to end. So
Yeah.
you are thinking through things like data strategy, you're thinking through the funnel, you're thinking through technology, you're thinking through performance and friction points. So you're not just thinking and focused on what's happening, but why it's happening. And so I
Yes.
think in moments where there is change and transition, not just internal to an organization, but I think broader in the industry, which I think everybody knows with AI and everything that's going on, like things are fundamentally changing and shifting. And I think in those moments, I think companies are really looking for somebody who can bring clarity quickly, and ops leaders are typically trained to think that way and identify root causes very quickly, make
Yeah.
sure that there's alignment across teams, build the predictability and the scalability. And those are really a lot of those executive muscles that you need to build. So, when I took a step back, I'm like, okay, yeah, actually, maybe this is the natural progression when you're in an ops role. I think, 5 years ago, we probably would have been having a conversation of like, is it even possible to be a VP of operations, of marketing
Right.
operations at
Yeah.
an organization? I think things are moving so quickly now that yes, like full
There
scale
are some. Yeah. Yeah. There are
marketing,
some.
but even ops, like leaning into your career progression actually is full scale leadership in
Yeah.
marketing. Like I think that's a fundamental shift that's
Yeah.
starting to happen.
I was talking to somebody yesterday and they asked me like, what's my view of marketing ops? And I said, like it's a really interesting question because I hadn't heard it asked that way. Right. And
Yeah.
my initial reaction was like, is this, my family asking me what at holidays, right? What do you do for work? And have tried to explain that, but it was a slightly different one. And I think of it as, I've always thought of it as an enabler kind of function.
Yep.
but what I said is like I think it's more than that, and it should be more than that. It should be like a consultant, almost like an internal consultant, because like to your point, you see across all these different parts of the organization, you have to deal with them. It's part of what I love about it,
Yeah.
and it was even for me, it was like I hadn't really thought about it that way. So I think you're right in that respect.
Yeah. And I think the ops function and the leadership that I think companies are looking for from marketing now is a fundamental shift that you have to be a systems thinker, right? Like it's all
Yeah,
about scale, it's all about profitability, it's making the right investments, and you have to think of the ecosystem that you're
thinking of
working
trade
in.
offs and yeah. So I want to kind of drill on that a little bit, but just curious, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Maybe like, were you actually like initially resistant to the idea?
Yes, funny story. About a year before, um, somebody on the team had actually said to me, "Wow, like I think you'd make a great CEO, CMO," and I was like, "Nah, like not something that I really even want." And yeah, like I would say I still have a little bit of resistance
Sure.
to it, but um, yeah, I think initially there was the resistance of like I'm happy to pitch in and help out as every ops person is,
Right.
like we'll get in
Yeah.
there and we'll get it done.
Yeah.
Um, but there was that level of resistance.
Yeah.
Uh,
Interesting.
start.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you brought up like they're now VP of marketing ops roles, and I think that's right. But at the same time, I also see basically teams of one, right? And the
Yep.
like the title is doesn't really reflect it, I think. And so I hope that there's more of that. But one of the things that you and I talked about and was kind of the trigger for this conversation was the idea that you believe that future CMOs that there's a real opportunity for them to come from ops backgrounds.
Yeah.
What makes you think that that's the case? And like yeah, you touched on system thinking, but what makes because on the one hand, I think you're right. On the other hand, I don't. I still see. I feel like I still see more people going into those marketing, most senior marketing leader roles, CMO, head of market, VP marketing, that don't come in an ops background. So, are you seeing something that's changing that I'm not? I'm just curious.
I th- I think I am, and I mean this is really not evidence based by any means.
No, I mean it feels like there's anecdotal stuff all over the place.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things at play, right? I think coming out of uh coming out of COVID, I think a lot of things have changed. I think the current economic and political conditions, right? Like the money that was in the market from an investment perspective before COVID was a little fast and free. I think now there's a lot more tied to it. So there is an increasing pressure um, on the drive for predictability, making the right investments, and making sure that you're scaling a business appropriately. And I think like the old way, it was, yeah, let's invest $1 million in brand, right? Like,
Yeah,
let's do all the things. Let's make the splash. Um, and I think a lot of marketing leaders in that world forgot to pivot, right? So it's great you're doing a lot of the brand work, but then at some point you have to pivot to growth. And
yeah,
I think that's where a lot of leaders that don't have that solid operational background get caught, right? So I think now that there's that focus on profitability and efficient and effective scale, like an ops person is well suited because you are always switching gears, right? And you're always thinking of what do we need to do to get to that level of growth and that predictability and that scale that we need to do. It has to be that balance of growth and brand, right?
yeah,
They play off of each other, and that's very hard to, if you're not a systems thinker, it's very hard um, to like measure brand, to understand the impact, to communicate that. So I think an ops person um, is just wired a bit different from a systems
yeah,
and an ecosystem perspective, and that's really fundamentally in their DNA. to be thinking about the data, the funnel, the tech, the workflow, and the economics behind what we're doing, right? So
Yes.
there are not a lot of other functions in marketing where you're actively having conversations with finance around things like CAC and margin and investments. So that's already part of a marketing operation, a good marketing operations function. You're already there.
Yeah. It's funny because like what's going through my head right now, and I agree with you on all that, is that I think what gets in the way of many marketers is they get focused on things that what I would call things that only marketers care about, right?
Yeah.
And it ends up becoming about outputs rather than outcomes.
Yes.
So, and I have a real life example that happened recently, actually with someone very close to me. I won't go into details, but where it just I had to go like, this is fight the fight, but this is something that only a marketer cares about, and if you can get over it, that's good. But it's you may have to negotiate through that a little bit. So
Yeah. On that point, it's an interesting one because there's a lot like it's important for marketing, but it's not really important for anybody
yeah,
else. And I think
yeah,
also like when you're in an ops role, like you have that hat on where you're like, this conversation can't happen over there, right? Like this is just for marketing. And I always
yes.
come back to like, you know, I don't want to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up, like attribution.
That was the one I was like, that's exactly my take, right?
That word should never be used upstairs, right? Like everybody has a different connotation of what that means, and you spend all your energy trying to just corral that conversation. Like attribution is for understanding marketing performance, right? Like that's what we use to base our decisions off of. We don't need to lift that up to an executive level and say, oh, our W-shaped model is telling us that. No, like that's
Yeah.
way too much.
I had this exact conversation yesterday too, right? It was
Yeah.
like which attribution model do you care? It was like,
Ooh.
okay, here we go. Like at the end, I also am like I don't think it really matters that much, right? Pick one, stick with
Yeah.
it, but more importantly, don't try to avoid taking it outside of marketing.
Yeah.
Like like there are better ways to communicate outside of marketing than an attribution model because no one believes it. The math
Yeah.
is complicated, and as soon as something comes out that's an anomaly, people start to question it, and it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
um, so okay, so I'm with you on all that. The systems thinking. I do hope that there's some change there in what we start seeing in the market for people getting in those roles. Um, you mentioned you touched on this a little bit too earlier. You talked about like the unique, somewhat unique perspective that marketing ops folks have. Um, how do you think that also helps for someone who's in marketing ops as being more prepared for a senior role that goes across all of marketing?
In terms of like having that experience to see broadly
Yeah,
across,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think you used the phrase like hub of the wheel, right?
yeah.
Like,
I think I think every like if I think broader across marketing, every function has a focus, and they really are focused on that function, right? So
yep,
events person is really about like how do I execute on this event? Um, webinars, same thing. Um, Ops is the underlay across all of that, right? So you are the one that is seeing all of that connective tissue. And in past ops roles, when you start thinking of the number of touch points that we have to have from marketing to get us over to sales and to an opportunity, like everybody needs to start thinking about the throw to. So like you run a webinar, what are you throwing to next, right?
yes,
So
hmm
I've done a lot of work in the ops framework to say, here's the sequencing of touch points that we understand that will get us to that point. And that's not something that you see in other functions, right? Like that's typically not how some of those functions work. I think that is changing with AI and how marketing is going to look in a year or two from now, right? But I think that, in that ops role, you are that connective framework. So what that opens up and what that unlocks is that visibility allows you to start to understand and make decisions or recommendations that are not biased, that are based on data, that are more a reflection of the reality of the outcome than, hey, I did a great event. Like it shifts the focus off of we're doing all these great things,
Right.
right? It's like, really, what is the outcome? So you could have something like a program that's not performing very well, but hey, if that's actually feeding into something else, maybe there's a use case to keep it, right?
Yeah.
And those are the conversations, I think, and the mindset that come from an ops person versus a program manager that would be, hey, I don't think this is performing well. I'm just going to cut it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to me. I think the two connective points within an organization that marketing ops tends to have over other marketing functions would be the obvious ones, right? Sales and sales ops,
Yeah.
and I think that, to your point, right? If we do this thing that's going to generate something, right? So what, right? What's the next, like, how's that tied to the customer journey? The other, and you touched on this, is finance.
Yeah.
And I think I've worked with or run into marketing leaders who I think are pretty good with finance and numbers, but I've worked with probably many more. I don't know that I could put a percentage on that are really don't get it, and I think that's, to me, no, our longtime listeners will not be shocked by this. Like, I think that's a real miss, and I think
Yes.
that's a really important skill that we should everyone should be finding. Do you find, like, do you think those are two? I mean, legal's another one, but like, it's I
Legal
don't
and
know
privacy,
that.
yeah, those are big
Yeah,
ones.
but I think the sales one, because I think everyone wants to go, like, how do you bridge the gap between marketing and sales? There's always friction.
Yeah.
I think a marketing ops person, someone with that background, is uniquely positioned to have a better chance of understanding where they're coming from.
Yes. Yes. I think, yeah, like I think that alignment and that connective tissue, like it is like the further you get away from marketing, the harder it is for people to get there. So, like if I think of that connective tissue, like we're fairly in lockstep with sales, right?
Yeah,
Because that's our handoff, right? But if you get further down the road, like okay, like we close a deal, we got a customer up and running. Now we're talking about like margins, payback period, CAC,
yeah,
right? Like that's further away from where we need to be. So I think a lot of ops professionals or marketing in general, like it's very hard to get there or get that exposure because it is further away. Um, but I've always had the opportunity to be very close partner with finance,
me too.
um, and interesting conversations, right? Because finance also doesn't 100% understand the marketing world, right?
Right.
I remember not at Trulioo, but at a previous organization having um, a bit of an awkward conversation with the finance team because they wanted to know the conversion from MQL to opportunity. They just wanted the number, right? I'm like,
Right.
well, it's not one to one.
Yeah.
They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we can have an account that has multiple MQLs on it, one op.
Right.
How are
Right.
we
Right.
calculating this, right? So I think it's because we're also so far away. Like the inverse is the same, right? So when you have junior people in finance that you're talking to, like they also don't have a lot of that exposure to the guts of marketing and how things work. They often just see
They just
spend
see,
$1 million on brand. What's going on,
yeah,
right?
with no, they see all the I, they don't see any of the R in
Yeah,
ROI, right?
yeah. And so I think there is a skill in there in operations on how to talk to different areas of the organization in different ways. Like again, what's important inside of marketing is not going to be important with finance, right?
Yeah.
So you have to figure out like what is it that that we need to communicate to finance. And it's interesting, like as I'm saying that, because I never like coming from an ops background, like I never consider myself a storyteller, But
Yeah.
as I'm saying that, I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, you are, right? Because you have to figure out like what is the story that we're or what is it that we're going to be
Yeah.
communicating with finance. It's very different than talking about program performance.
We had some guests on a couple months ago. One was a senior marketing leader, but both of them were. And the senior marketing leader, we talked about this, like, because my assertion is that there's a lot of marketing leaders out there who are really good at storytelling with everyone except for their own organization. And it was interesting because this guy had been a CMO. He's like, yeah, like actually the best finance leaders are great storytellers because if you listen to how they talk about stuff, if it's a public company in particular, right, to the
Yeah,
with so to investors or to the markets, they do a really good job of telling the story about data. And I think that is a like it was a really big like, oh wow, like I can't like I would not have said that,
yeah,
but as I thought about it, I was like, that's actually really really true.
makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah. So like I tell people all the time, like I do coaching with people who are maybe moving into leadership roles, particularly in ops. And I said, if you don't understand finance, you should start learning the basics and become friends with your finance partner. Like
yeah,
really try to understand what they care about because it will help you down the road.
yeah.
Because
And they like my experience with finance, they always want to partner with you, right? Like
absolutely.
they always, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, they're always open and they're open to the questions, they're open to understanding, they're open to debate. So it's I always say that too to people that have been on my team. Like you want to make good friends with finance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, otherwise they look at you like you're the ones just writing checks from like nonstop,
Yep.
right? It's and you don't want to be that person
Yeah.
because it'll be really easy to go if you can't tell the story about what's happening from that money actually going out the door, then it's going to be really easy target to cut
Yeah.
when times get tough.
Yep.
And it's not a fun place to be.
No.
So, um, yeah, okay. So I think we're on the same page there. Um, Another thing you touched on a little bit ago is this shift. I think the way I would phrase it is like there's like this, especially in the kind of PE backed early stage growth companies, like growth at all costs, right? Top line is the most. It feels like what I'm seeing and hearing is that the shift has really been to adding the word profitable. Like profitable growth is now what they're looking for. Are you seeing the same kinds of things? And then maybe tying that back to like, how do you think that bodes well for marketing ops folks who are interested in a broader leadership role?
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, I'm seeing that with other marketing colleagues, right? Like, there's an expectation to be doing more with less, um, whether it's headcount, whether it's budget. I think again, like, fast and free money is gone. You really
Yeah,
have to be focused on building something that is scalable and efficient. So I think, I think there's a different expectation from boards as well. Like coming back to it's not just being able to tell the story, it's being able to measure and prove and show. And I think that is, if you think 5 years ago, marketing ops really was positioned like you're the right hand of the CMO. Like you're feeding all the data, you're feeding all the insights, you're making sure like things are operating the way that they should be. Like it should have been a natural progression that the right
yeah,
hand moves in, right? Um, so I just think that with that focus on efficiency, I also think with the seismic shift now with AI
yeah,
and not just in marketing, but how businesses as a whole operate, like everybody is going to have to be dealing with that. How do you drive more efficiency? How do you focus on the right things? And again, that comes back to ops. Like we've been sitting in that world for years, right? Like attribution. How do we measure this? What's the data strategy? Do we understand what's going on? What are the sequences? What are the patterns? What are the signals versus what's the noise, right? Like
yeah,
all of those things that we've been dealing with lean in heavily to how do we make sure that we're doing things the right way? And coming into this role, like we also had to do a restructure, right?
Okay.
And that was very like for me, I've had to do that in previous roles as well as the ops person, where a CMO is coming to you to say, where can we find money?
Yeah.
Where do we find the money? Where do we find the money that's not going to impact our KPIs, or it's going to have the minimal impact on KPIs? But then also like both from a people and capacity standpoint, like are we maxed out? Are we not maxed out? Like that's always been a question that a CMO would feed to an ops person.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think like we're already there. We've been there for years. So it only makes sense that like we should be that natural lift into the leadership role because we're well suited. We have the muscle.
Yeah. I tell people often I'm creative, but not in the way people think of marketers as being creative. I'm creative
Yeah.
in like how to maximize the limited resources we have, people,
Yeah.
money, you know, solutions, whatever.
Yes. It's
So
a, it's
you,
a it's a different level of creativity,
yeah,
right? Like, I'm
yeah,
glad you brought that up because most people don't think that ops people are creative. I mean, we're a special bunch, yes, but there is a lot of creativity, right? And I think about, like when a project completes, like you're already spinning through, how would I have done this differently?
yeah,
Like, where could we have been better? If we're going to
yeah,
do it again, and that's a lot of creativity to think through that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I go back to before I was in ops, I did IT consulting. At one point, I kind of was an architect for a very boutique kind of software platform, and I always was thinking about well, longer story is like there was somebody on the team who was really really creative, like came up with really cool stuff, but there were always holes in the solution, so I was always the one closing the holes. But he always, like, I loved it, like it was a good partnership. But um like I was always looking for how can we be more efficient, like optimizing stuff, and I think that's the what you're talking about.
Yeah,
And then if you get into like somebody comes to you says, another thing I coach to, you know, be ready to answer the question, where would I cut X amount? Or
yeah,
if you're lucky enough, like what would you spend the next dollar on? Like those are questions that you should be thinking about.
all the
Or
time.
things that are
Yeah,
like that. I mean, I think that's a good skill to have.
yeah.
So I'm curious, you talked about you had to do a restructure. Like how do you think you thought about structuring it? I assume there was some of that was maybe cutting. I don't know. You didn't really say that. Maybe that's what you meant, but also like maybe it was moving roles around or shifting things. Like how do you think you approached it differently than like maybe I'll call it a traditional CMO with a different kind of background?
Yeah, I think the fundamental difference is just in that ops mindset, like you're thinking about the outcome, not the action,
Yeah.
right? So rather than thinking we need this title, we need this title, we need this title, it's taking that step back and saying, what is the organization asking us to support? And then how do we set up the system to support that? Whether that's
Mm,
people, whether that's a new type of role, with, the impacts of AI, right? Like I think as I'm starting to take a step back, and the way we restructured really was we needed to make some room to rebuild the right function for the organization. Um, and as we're doing that, like it's a very different profile that we're looking at. Like everything has to have a flavor of AI, right? But I think also like as you're thinking through the future of marketing, um, it's no longer going to be I just do this function, right? Like
right.
I think you need to, as a marketer, broaden what you're bringing to the table, right? And thinking, like we had a session with a team yesterday, a workshop, and I was like, listen, like we have a very exciting opportunity in front of us right now to re-envision how we work as
Yeah.
a marketing team, right? And again, if you're thinking of like who's great to lead that, it's probably the ops leaders because you understand the connectivity, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody in their function is like, I don't think we should do this, you're already thinking, oh yeah, but over there, that's where the impact is going to be, or that over there, or like now we're going to create some friction points somewhere else. not
This is
necessarily
like
bad.
I think at one point this was called a T-shaped marketer, right? And I think
Yeah,
what's going through my head is like marketing ops folks were sort of forced to do that just because of the nature of the role.
yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. So, like I think it really, like as I'm like re-envisioning and as I'm interviewing people, I was interviewing for a product marketer, and I was like, okay, how is AI going to change product marketing? As an interview question, right? And
Yeah,
the answers are very interesting, right? But
right.
I think marketing in general is going through a pretty seismic shift in how it's operating.
Yeah, and I think maybe this is where you were going to is like there's a little bit of you've almost got to be a little bit of an architect for change.
Yes.
And so understanding how all these things work together and where things could break down and how to kind of minimize that risk and all that. Those are like things that the best marketing ops folks think about naturally to some
Yeah.
degree or are forced to. That's really interesting. Are there any? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but are there any particular titles or roles that you think are unique to what you've structured? Or
Um, I wouldn't say that we've like changed the titles per se, but the profiles are very different. So, if you're looking for a content marketer, I'm like, well, how are you like my first question is going to be, how are you leveraging AI?
yeah,
Right? Um, when we did the restructure, I giggle on this one a little bit. When we did the restructure, yes, we did have to part ways with some people, and we had a capacity constraint and a lot of
yeah,
pressure from the business. And in the space of a couple of hours, I wrote a 12-page white paper, and I'm not a writer.
right,
Like that's the fundamental shift that's happening right now. So like if we are going to hire a content marketer and we've got an FTE capacity, what are you doing with AI? And then what does that like the space you're saving, what are you filling that up with? Right? So um, that profile is shifting. Have the titles themselves changed? Not really,
not so
but
much. The
um,
expectations are different.
yeah, and that will change, right? Because, like what are you filling up? If you get 50% efficiency using AI as a content producer, like what are you doing with other 50%? Now is it does it become a hybrid role? Like, like a lot of these things are very fluid right now. Like we are having those
Sure.
discussions. It's even like where does customer marketing sit? Is it in
Well, I'm
revenue
glad that
marketing?
you're even just talking about it because I think a lot of organizations focus so much on new logos.
New, yeah,
Yeah,
which is a miss, in my opinion, right? Like a lot of organizations I've been with, yeah, marketing, budget, new, go
I mean,
new,
when
go
I got
new.
into marketing, that was in the heyday of when everyone would say like the cost to acquire a new customer is way higher. Like I don't remember the multiplier compared to retaining a customer. Like
Yeah,
I don't think that's really fundamentally changed,
yeah,
right? So it's a miss in my book for the companies that aren't thinking about
yeah.
it. I'm curious. This is a little bit of an aside as a in your hiring philosophy. Like one that I say a lot is that I would hire for attitude over aptitude pretty much everywhere. So in other words, like I want someone who is coachable,
Yeah,
willing to learn, will work hard. Like those are not skills, right? Versus aptitude, which I think of as skills. Because I think it can teach a lot of that. I mean,
yeah,
there are certain roles where there's got to be like a minimum, but after
yeah,
that, it's like I've seen people who maybe didn't have all the skills I really wanted for, but I could tell like the attitude was there,
yeah,
and they've just done great.
yeah.
Do you think about that at all when you're hiring?
Yes,
Okay,
100%. Like yeah, like for a role, there's the baseline of skills that you need, right? So like
sure,
you're not going to get to the interview if you don't seemingly have the baseline of what we're looking for. But I think really what goes a long way is the soft skills, the EQ, um, being able to understand and make the connections within an organization or within the team. Um, you can upskill people, right? Like you can teach somebody new tricks. If they don't like those EQ traits are very, very, very hard to train somebody up on, right? Like if somebody doesn't have self-awareness, like that's going to be a very hard challenge. And
I,
and
I,
in
I agree and I disagree.
yeah,
I think you as a leader, you can't just give up, right? I think
no,
it doesn't mean that somebody is going to be the best, but I think people can become more proficient to the point
yeah,
where I almost sort of recoil at the idea of the term soft skills because they're just
yeah.
skills.
I mean, I mean, we could probably do a whole session on that. I agree. You can train people up on soft skills, but I think, coming back to what you said, like that openness, right? I
Yeah.
think maybe that's what I'm sort of referring to in the
Yes.
self-awareness, right? Like if you don't recognize that you don't have those soft skills, when you get
Right.
feedback and
Are
try
you
and train
open
on
to
it,
that?
like
Right.
you get into a very
Yeah.
uncomfortable space with your direct reports. Like I have somebody on my team that is um, very open to the feedback and desperately wants to upskill their soft skills, and it's great, right?
Yeah.
Like
There's so
every
much you could do with that. So
like
much
there's
you could do with that.
yeah, like it's exciting because like there is so much you can do and you can see the progress versus somebody who may not have an understanding that their soft skills aren't quite where they need to be, and when you have those conversations they're closed off.
Right. They
That's
get defensive. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
But to your point,
I
like
think,
good point that they are soft skills, right? So you should be
yeah.
able to train people or coach people on soft skills.
Yeah. I mean, I've even got to the point like just that baseline skills. I've tried to get it as like low that bar as much as I can. The simple one is like if the default job description says must have a college degree, if I can get the HR team to agree to take that off as a
Oh,
hard requirement, I will do it.
yeah. Well, I mean, what is yeah? I'm of the same opinion, right? Like, um, I mean, there are certain jobs where you do need that level of education, but um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's if you took
it's
that,
arbitrary.
yeah, it is arbitrary, right? Like if you took that off and you didn't see that in an application, would you be able to determine it through the interview process? I mean, depending on the role, maybe.
I think then that's when experience takes
Yeah,
over, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So
100%.
it's not that it's kind of like to me, it's a little bit like certifications
Yeah,
in which I don't necessarily give a whole lot of stock in those, but they do like all things being equal, it shows a level of commitment to craft or
yeah,
to like learning that I think does speak to
yeah.
it. Plus, I would also be a bit hypocritical because I have very few certifications, and
I,
eh,
as a guy who has a lot of certifications, it's just I don't know. I'm stubborn and competitive, so I'm always like, oh, I need another one. Um, I think, yeah, to your point, it is an indication of commitment to your craft.
yeah,
But I will say, like, a lot of those certification exams are just about how you take a test,
yeah,
not what you know, right? So, and I place more value on the practical experience, right? Because just because you have a cert does not mean you know what you're doing.
yeah. So one of the things I think we didn't quite talk about this, but we touched on, I think this bit is like the point I made, like the only things that marketers care about is a little bit of, it feels like there's a lot of marketers who their ego is tied into what they produce, right? Um, and what they create and whether it
Yeah.
works or not. Like how, do you think that is, I mean, I'm proud of the work I do too, and I'm self-critical and all those things, but do you think that there's a little bit of a different mindset that you see this is all generalizations, of course,
Yeah.
between marketing ops professionals and call it general marketers?
Yes. So it's interesting. Like marketing tends to, you're attracting creatives, you're attracting people who want to build things. My talking about degrees, my undergrad degree was actually in fine arts, in visual communications. And I go back to like week over week, you're doing critiques where you're putting your work up on the board and people are
Yeah.
tearing it to shreds, right? And you start to develop a thick skin, right? But a lot of people don't have the benefit of going through that process. Um, and I think when you're creative and you put all of that effort in, your identity gets attached to that artifact. And so when people start to give you feedback on that artifact, it can become very personal.
Yeah.
And I think, when you come back to an ops mindset, it's not necessarily about the artifact, it's about what's happening with the artifact, right?
Sure.
So you're again like conflict resolution. Stay away from the emotions, focus on the data, right? Like an ops role, you're breaking that cycle because you're like, okay, like let's look at what it did. You could have an artifact that people are like, oh my God, it's the best thing we've done ever, and it falls flat, it doesn't perform, right? So
Yeah.
it's that shift from activity to outcome.
Yeah.
It's the neutrality of looking at how that's supporting scale and really delivering the outcomes for the business that we're looking for.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think about when I was running search marketing for an organization, and I see this a lot where people get caught up in it is the grammar correct in the ad, the copy, and especially on search. Like I have found more, probably equal, right, where good, well written, good grammar performs well, and
Yeah,
times when shitty grammar, right, poor punctuation,
yeah,
misspellings, actually works as well or better.
yeah,
And so, to me, like I don't care.
yeah,
Like I just and I also think about this is I think another mindset thing that I think about because I've had to coach very often in marketing teams where I see there's a lot of pressure to get a lot of stuff out, and people get frustrated. It takes too long. Why hasn't it gone out? Blah 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 blah. And when I look at it, you go like the process is broken internally. We've got way too many people involved, or
yeah,
too many review processes. And I say, what I tell people is like, you need to start thinking about these in different levels of review, right?
yeah,
So if you've got something like an ad, like a search ad that you could literally change in seconds, why are you spending so much time trying to get it perfect? Because it'll never be that way. Like
yeah,
get it out there fast and learn from it,
yeah,
adjust, cut it, modify it. And I think if they thought about it differently, right? I
yeah,
think that's like there's this to your point, this ego is caught up in the perfection
yeah.
of the
It's
qual.
perfection over progress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
I
you
think
can get caught in it, right? And I think but I think also like part of that is providing the psychological safety for the team to make mistakes, right? Like when you're talking about that approval process, like yeah, we we get in our own way. I like
yeah,
at every organization that I've been at, we get in our own way, right? Like so what I try and do is make sure everybody knows like I got your back, right? If shit hits the fan, like I'll stand in front of it.
yeah.
I'll take it, right? Uh, I just need to,
My only ask there is like just try to give me some warning that it's
yeah,
coming.
I was just about to say that. I'm like, you just need to give me a heads up, right? Because the last thing I want is like, wait, what now? Like, I have no
Yeah,
idea what's going on here. So like, already in the last couple of months, I've seen the team where they're like, do I need to? And I was like, no, just do it, right? Like, we want to run fast. All organizations are, we want to run fast, we want to do this, but then everybody wants to get involved. I'm
yeah,
like, you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together, right? Like, so it's that
yes,
balance. There's certain
love
things
that.
that we need to do together, but yeah, like a search ad, just go, right? Like,
Yeah,
we're also like, as we're trying to figure out ways to better harness what's going on with LLMs and search, and we're getting into Reddit, and I had somebody on the team. They're like, "Well, can I just start responding to posts?" I was like, "Yeah, right." Like, just go, right? Like
yeah,
but like just keep me in the loop so
yeah,
if something does hit the fan, like I can get in front of it.
yeah,
But yeah, like you want to, as a leader, you want to provide that psychological safety and everybody understand that, yeah, okay, you got my back, but that also rests on having that level of open communication.
Richard. I wish we could keep going, but I think we're
Yeah.
gonna have to cut it off. I feel like we barely just touched the surface of some of this stuff, and we didn't even get into a real debate about hiring. No,
Yeah.
uh, but this has been, I think, really fascinating, and I would encourage. Hopefully, this is encouraging to the people who are in marketing ops, wondering like what's next, like what is the career path for me? Is it
Yeah.
always going to be in this ops thing? Could it be something broader? Because I think there's a lot of potential there. And I hope that there's some marketing leaders or just business leaders in general who start to pay attention to this, because I don't feel like it's quite there yet. It's getting there. I think there's a lot of potential.
Yeah.
So why don't we end here? Two questions for you. Why was there any like other things that we didn't touch on that you might want to just like think about this for the people? And then after that, maybe what's if people wanted to kind of continue the conversation, maybe with you, or at least understand, like learn more about what's going on in your world, what's the best way for them to do that? So I'll leave it
Yeah.
with those two questions and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I think the first one is yeah, I would agree with you. Like we're not quite there where it's like, oh, the ops career path is a shoe in a CMO. I think there is hope though. Like I think a couple of years ago, I'd start to see a lot of ops people move on from ops, which is really unfortunate, right? You see people go back to demand gen. Um,
I know of one person who's actually has been a guest who got out of marketing altogether and is doing like bookkeeping,
yeah,
accounting.
yeah, and I think that I honestly like I think the burnout is real
Yeah.
post COVID, but I do hope this offers a little bit of hope for everybody, right? That there is progression in ops, and keep fighting the good fight. In terms of getting a hold of me or wanting to talk more, like connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to have a quick coffee chat or what have you, or Michael, if you want to do round two, doing another episode. So, uh,
we should plan on that in 2026. How about
yeah,
that?
yeah, see where I've ended up.
Yeah, there
What's
we
going
go.
on?
We could
Yeah,
do that. That would be great. Richard, thank you so much. I think this would be a great I do. I think it'll be encouraging for our listeners, especially as we're kind of heading into the end of the year and getting ready for next year. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thanks to our audience out there for continuing to support us. If you have ideas for topics or guests, or you want to be a guest like Richard, please feel free to reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me, and we'd be happy to get the ball rolling on that. Until next time, bye everybody.